Let's imagine that I have some bitwise buffer, so it's a single byte, and I want to write to it bit by bit. So this is the most significant bit, this is the least significant bit, and let's imagine that I want to write to this from left to right. So let's say this is index 0, index 1, index 2, index 3, index 4, index 5, index 6, index 7. So the first bit that I write, I want to write it here. The next bit that I write, I want to write it here, so on and so forth. Well, when my buffer is empty, I can start with a current index that's initially 0. And what do I want to do? So I'm given a single bit, but remember, I can usually pretty much just represent it, like it'll probably be represented as some integer. So what I'm trying to write will probably look like this. How do I insert this bit into this slot of my bitwise buffer? Well, first thing is that I have to move this over from the rightmost slot to the leftmost slot. So let's say this is, let's call this B, and let's call this buff. So what do I have to do? I have to move B over, in this case, 7 spaces, but if C was here, I would move it over 6 spaces. If C was here, I would move it over 5 spaces, so on and so forth. So I want to take B, the bit that I'm trying to add to my buffer, and I'm going to shift it over left by 7 minus C. So C is currently 0. If I shift this over 7, it would go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in the right spot. What if C was 1? I would shift it over 7 minus 1 is 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in the right slot. So I'd shift it over 7 minus C to get it into the right spot. So now I have my bit in the correct spot. So my bit is here now. And I want to set this bit using this. So remember, my bitwise buffer is initially empty. So initially, all the bits are 0. If I want to set this bit, when I know this bit is initially 0, I can take my buffer. So let's say that I move this over 7, for example. I would get this number, where this is either 0 or 1. I want to OR this with my buffer. So if my buffer is currently 0, and this is 0, 0 OR 0 will be 0. If this bit is currently 1, 1 OR 0 is 1. So if I OR my buffer, which is initially all 0, with the result of shifting this over left to the right spot, then ORing my buffer with the result of that will set the corresponding bit to be B. So I'm going to OR my buffer with the result of this, and I'm going to update my buffer to store that value. So I'm going to update my buffer by ORing it with the result of shifting B over 7 minus C spaces. So now I've officially set this bit, and then I want to increment my current pointer, or my current index. Sorry. Now I would do it again. So let's say I have another bit. I want to shift it over. This time it would be 7 minus 1, which is 6. So I would shift it over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it would look like this. Again, I would OR my buffer with that value, which will set this bit to be that value. And then I would increment my current index. Now it's here. I would do the same thing again with my next insertion, my next insertion, my next insertion, my next insertion, my next insertion. So now current is 7. 7 minus 7 is 0. I shift this over 0, so I don't shift it at all. I OR my buffer with it, so I set this bit, reassign, increment my current index, which is now 8. Uh-oh, that's out of bounds. What does that tell me? it tells me that my buffer is currently full, so I should write the contents of my buffer to disk, or in general to my output stream, and then I should reset my buffer to 0 and set current back to 0. So the moment my current index is 8, I should write my buffer to the output stream, set my buffer to 0, and then set my current index to 0.